Hello, MJ7NLK here and welcome back to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, then thank you for your ongoing support. It really does mean the world to me. Today we are looking at the President Teddy 2 CB radio. We will be taking a tour of the box, unboxing its contents, looking at how to configure the radio, running power tests, modifying the radio or expanding it, and running through how to access the hidden services menu and what the settings mean and do. The newer President radios do not have trim pots to adjust the radio's inputs and outputs. These settings are now adjusted using a service menu. I have lots of President radio service manuals, but I do not have the service manual for the Teddy 2. So if you have a copy and aren't going to face issues providing it to me, then please get in contact. I must point out that modifying a radio is at your own risk. I am doing this so you don't have to. You will have legal obligations in your region with regards to radio transmissions, licensing and power outputs. You should always ensure that you are not causing a nuisance and, more importantly, not causing any radio interference or distress to others. I have put together some guides which will be shown on the screen later in this video. Please pause the video and take a photo to retain the information for later use. Most President radios are named after presidents of the United States of America, and this one is named after Theodore Roosevelt. He was born on October the 27th, 1858 to a wealthy family in New York City. Teddy was one of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, to Theodore Sr. and Martha Roosevelt. With the assassination of President McKinley in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt, his then Vice President, became the 26th and youngest President of the United States in September of that same year. He later went on to win a second term in office on his own merits in 1904. Teddy was believed to have said, "If you could kick the arse of the person responsible for most of your troubles, you won't be able to sit down for a month." Very true. He is also one of the 4 presidents whose heads were carved in stone on Mount Rushmore. That's one rock group with 4 members that can't play or sing. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at the Teddy 2. This is the Teddy 2 ASC CB radio, which is at the cheaper end of the President lineup, and we're going to take a look at it now. So a quick rundown of the features of the Teddy 2. It costs about £80 of your hard-earned cash. The power input is 12 volts only. It does not support 24 volts. The power output is rated at the standard 4 watts. It has a large screen that supports 7 different back colours, noise blanker filter, which reduces background noise and reception interference. It has automatic squelch control, talkback, Vox. It has key beep and of course the essential Roger beep. And it uses the standard DNC 520 up-down microphone. So looking over the box, the President Teddy 2, we have an image of the radio here, 7-colour display, automatic squelch control, 3-year warranty, 2+ 3-year warranty. If you open this radio, that will well and truly void your warranty, so just be aware of that. The barcode here takes you to the President Electronics website and the webpage for the Teddy 2. Let's carry on round the box. On the side here it says all European norms are supported, which is excellent, so it will support the UK FM 40, which is nice to see. On the other side, nothing extra there, and on the edges we have not a great deal else to show you there. On the back, we have the usual stencil that you get on the boxes of the President radios, and it's nice to see here that we have the external speaker socket on the cheaper end of the President CB radio range. Let's crack on and unbox the radio and see what we get inside. Okay, inside the box, we get the usual President radio sticker. We get the user manual, which we will come back to in a moment. We get the standard President microphone, the up-down button version of the microphone. These microphones are superb. I say this in every video. They are really good microphones, but they do feel a bit plasticky, a bit light, and a bit cheap. So in the future, President, if you're listening, please pay a little bit of attention to these microphones. Even if they were weighted and they had a little bit of a metal grill on the front or something, it would make all the difference to how they feel when they're being used. But they do work well. We have the accessory bundle, which has the microphone clip, the fuse or a spare fuse, and the mounting hardware. We also have the bracket itself that holds the radio in place. There is nothing else in the accessory section. And that leaves us with the radio. So this is the Teddy 2. We don't have many buttons on the front of this radio, so there will be lots of combinations that you will need to know in order to be able to make adjustments and settings to the radio, but we will cover those a little bit later on. We have a mode and noise blanker button. We have the emergency channel and F button, the function button. We have the automatic squelch control, the channel up and down, which also doubles as Vox settings, and the on-off dial. This radio does not have a rotary channel changer, which is a shame. I much prefer that than up-down buttons. On the sides of the radio, there is really nothing to show. And at the back, we have the standard SO239 connector. And we also have the Vox input and the external speaker jack. Now, the observant of you will have noticed that the box for the President radio here, it actually shows the stencil of the rear of the radio, and the sockets are much closer together on the stencil than they actually are on the radio itself. So this radio could be a slightly later revision if the stencil was the original. Not that that makes any difference, but there we go. This power cable is a fixed affair. It does not have a clip to be able to detach it. Let me just check and see what the fuse rating is for this. One moment, please. Okay, so the fuse is a 5 amp 250 volt fuse, which tells me that this radio really, along with the fact that there is no heatsink on the rear whatsoever, this radio is not going to be pushing out any or a great deal more power than the standard 4 watts, maybe 5 watts. I wouldn't expect to get much more out of it. There is no provision for cooling on the rear of this radio. So that's the unboxing of the Teddy 2, and let's move on to the next item. So looking at the manual further, this is an important piece of material. You will have to refer to this. There is a lot of combinations of keys and buttons that you need to push to be able to make settings to the radio, and they are all outlined in here. We will run through them, but you will definitely need to read this. So let's take a quick look at the manual and see what we have. Oh, look, we have it in French. And we have it in Spanish. And we also have it in English and in Polish. Now, there is a couple of things I want to point out in this manual. There appears to be a slight mistake in the English section of the manual. It tells you in the back, under the technical characteristics of the radio, that this radio supports power supplies of 13.2 volt, so take that as a 12 volt supply, that this radio does not support 24 volt. However, if you look in the English section of the manual on page 34, when it refers to A, which is the DC power terminal, that's referring to the image of the radio and the power cable at the back, it says 13.2 volt slash 26.4 volt. Now, the 26.4 volt here is a mistake. Because if you look in the other language sections of the radio, it will say here a 13.2 volt. So the only place it mentions the 24 volt is in the English section under that one particular piece, and that is definitely a mistake. So please do not connect this to a 24 volt power supply, or you could have some issues. The manual also says on page 31, item 2A, that the longer the antenna, the better the results. Well, that's what she says. Anyway, moving on. So next we're going to talk about some of the key combinations for making essential settings on the radio. Now, the first setting that you must make on every single CB radio that has ever existed on the face of this earth is to enable Roger Bleep. And in order to do that on the Teddy 2, you need to hold down the channel up button. That's here, and you need to turn the radio on. That will then say on and give you this little symbol here. So that now means we have Roger Beep enabled. The next setting to change is key beep, which is down channel, and turn the radio on, and that will say off, and that will stop it from making that very annoying beep every time you push a button. So to change the colour of the display, which by default is orange, you turn the radio off, and you're going to press the mode button, the EMG button, at the same time and turn the radio on. And when you do that, the radio will flash the particular colour, and you can use the up-down buttons for the channel selector, or you can use them on the microphone as I am doing, but if you leave it for more than 5 seconds or so, it will then just revert back to the radio. So that's why I'm pushing the buttons at the moment, so that we don't time out. So we have orange, we have green, we have blue, cyan, yellow, purple, clear, and back to orange. So I'm going to probably go with green. So in order to make the setting, you push the PTT button and then on the microphone, and that will save the colour that you have selected. So if you turn the radio off, turn the radio back on again, it will remember the setting. So the next one up is the frequency band. So this radio, if you purchase this from Knights, they will preset it to United Kingdom for you if it's being delivered to the United Kingdom. So what we're going to do is we're now going to change the frequency bands, and to do that you push the EMG button here and you hold it and you turn the radio on. That will then flash U, and you use the same method of up-down buttons on the microphone or on the radio. So U is for the UK, we've got India, we've got EU for the normal EU norms, Poland, Germany, and EC. And then back to U for United Kingdom. And again, you push the PTT button to make your selection, turn the radio off, turn the radio back on again, and that will then remember your setting. In order to reset the radio, you push the up channel button and the EMG button. So up channel, EMG, turn the radio on, and that will reset the radio. Turning the power off and then back on will have set this radio back to its default settings. So this radio also supports Vox, and you can set that by pushing the up and down channel buttons together. So pushing these two buttons together will enable Vox, and pushing them together once enabled will disable Vox. So that's your Vox settings, and to set the level you long press these two buttons together. So if you hold those together, you'll get level 4. You can use the microphone to then set your appropriate level and then push the PTT button to make that selection. So we currently have Vox set to off. This radio also supports talkback, aka vein mode, and what this does is it enables you to hear your own voice whilst transmitting through the speaker of the radio. And in order to set that, you hold the PTT button and you short press the F key or the EMG key, and you'll see that TB appears on the right hand side. And then what you can do, if you, let me just turn it off, if you turn it back on, you'll see it says 01, and then you can push your channel up down buttons to effectively set the level. Now you're hearing the feedback because it's picking up my voice and feeding back through the radio itself. But that's how you set the volume. So let's do that again. Let's hold the PTT button and push the F key to turn talkback off. And that's the talkback feature. So next up, we're going to undertake a standard power test and see how it's been configured from factory. So to do this, we're in FM mode, and we're going to go to mid-band channel 20. And then from mid-band channel 20, we're going to turn... So this setup is running into a digital power meter. The power meter is running through into a dummy load. So we're going to turn on the power meter, and then we will transmit. So 3.84 watts is what we are achieving as standard in FM, which is pretty good, to be honest. That's pretty good. And we're going to switch now to AM mode and see what we get there. So 3.87 watts is what we're getting in AM mode mid-band. So that's not bad out of factory. That's not bad at all. It's just under 4 watts and exactly what you would expect. So before we move on and we start messing with the radio and modding it, etc., let's just talk briefly about the negatives. They are really that the device does not support 24 volts, which is a bit of a shame. There's no USB socket on the front of the radio, which most of the new President radios have. There's no rotary knob. It's using up-down buttons, and I much prefer using a rotary dial in order to make channel selections. There are not many buttons on the front of the radio, which results in many key combinations having to be pushed in order to achieve settings. It would just be far easier if they had a couple more buttons and we didn't have to go through that or remember that, because you're going to have the manual to hand somewhere so that you can remember which buttons to push when you need to push them. There is also no scan mode. I mean, come on, really? No scan mode? You can't set the radio to scan through the 40 channels in order looking for a particular, for a signal of any kind. That is a bit of an omission as far as I'm concerned, and it would have been nice to have had a scan mode on this radio. So in order to open the radio up, you need to undo 4 screws on the case of the radio. There's no screws at the back that need to be removed on this particular one. Remember, you're removing the bottom plate because that's where the speaker is, and effectively the speaker will go into the cavity of the radio, so I would expect the circuit board to be running along the bottom. So after undoing those 4 screws, you can lift the lid. The speaker itself is on a removable wire in a socket. There's no desoldering needed to be done to remove the lid, but we don't need to pull that off. And let's take a look at what's inside. Well, that is emptier than a Unix underpants. It really is. There's not much going on inside here, apart from some extremely small electronics. We don't have any pots in here at all for adjustment, so there must be a hidden service menu, and there pretty much is nothing that you can do in here apart from modify the radio. So I'm going to do that now, and I will put some pictures on screen to show you how to do that. But essentially, you're going to cut this white wire here, this loop. You cut that wire and you move this jumper from the 1-2 position to the 2-3 position. It is as simple as that. So I'm going to do that now. So that has cut that wire, and then we will move the jumper. Okay, so that is done, and we have modded the radio. So that will release or unlock certain frequencies, which we will talk about in a moment. So let me put this back together, get it cabled back up. We'll see if that has made any difference to the power output, and we'll check and see how we operate through the new channel selections. Okay, so now that we've modified the radio, let's have a look and see if we get a power increase. Now, on some of the present radios, when you mod them, you get a small power increase. Some of them you get a large power increase. Some of them you get no power increase at all. Modding the radio unlocks the channels. It will always unlock the channels. But the fact that this radio has no heatsink on the back, I'm really not expecting much. So let's have a look and see. Let's turn the radio on. Okay, now the radio's on channel 20 midband AM. Let's turn on the power meter and let's see what sort of wattage we are pushing. So that's 3.86 watts output AM. Switch to FM and have a look there. That's 3.86 watts in FM. So that is not putting any additional power out from the mod itself. Now, talking of the mod, let's just have a quick look over the radio itself. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen next to channel 20, you have A. So that is A band. And if you progress through the channels, let's get up to channel 40. Once we go over 40, we should go to B band. We do. So we've gone over to B band, and then you'll go over to a C band. And I'll put up on the screen now all of the frequencies and the relevant channels. Okay, so next, if in modifying the radio, we should also have alphas, which we do. So we have channel 3 alpha, and then channel 4. Those are included in the items that I've put up on the screen, so you can see the alpha channels that it unlocks as well. So we should have channel 7A, 11A, 15A, and 19A. So we have the full alpha channel listings. So the next thing that you can also do with this radio is if you press and hold the EMG button, you will then switch modes. Now it will show you 2.0 rather than 20, and that will drop the frequency down slightly in each of the bands, the CEPT bands, and this is conventionally or normally referred to as the Polish CB bands. And as we move through the channels here, you'll see that the only difference really visually is that there is a dot between the two numbers, but that is 5 less. And you can look at that on the schedule, which I will display again now. And that is the right-hand block, which I've called Export Mode PL. And to switch back again, you just press and hold EMG, and you'll be back to TS mode, which is the conventional CEPT, low, mid, and high band ranges. So one last thing to note really here is that you don't have a button that can switch you between the A, B and the C band blocks, which is really quite annoying. If you push the mode button, that's fine. We're going to switch from FM UK to AM and then to FM again. If you push and hold the mode button, we're going to enable noise blanker, which we have. There isn't a button that can just jump you from A to B to C. You have to go up through the channels, and then once you hit 40, it'll then jump to the next block, which is C. And that's really quite annoying, because on some of the other President radios, you can push a button and just jump straight to band block C without having to keep progressing up through 80 channels to get there if you're starting at channel 1, band block A. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the service mode for this radio, the hidden service menu that the factory used to calibrate the device. Now, I do not have the service manual for the Teddy 2, so if you do have it, please send it my way. Now, I have produced a sheet which I will put on the screen now, which is the President Teddy 2 CB radio service menu information, and it explains how to get into the menus, what options are in the menu, and what values, based on my testing, you should be setting them to. It also explains the values that my radio came with by default. Now, I always recommend that you write down the settings in your radio before you change anything, because if something goes wrong or the radio is not operating as it should, you can at least return it back to factory settings. You can do damage in here, so please be careful. So the first thing to show you is how to get into the menu. And to do this, you are going to need to push and hold the PTT button on the radio, and you need to keep it depressed. You need to push the mode, the EMG button, and turn the radio on at the same time. You will then have TS displayed on the screen. Now, you don't have long. You have about 5 seconds to undertake the next item, which is to let go of that key combination and then push the EMG and the mode button. That will get you into the service menu. So let's do that now. So I hold the PTT button, I hold the mode and EMG button and turn the radio on, and then I push the two buttons, EMG and mode, and now I am in the service menu. So what does PL mean? Well, PL is FM low power adjustment mode. When you want to make a settings change in these menus, you hold the PTT button, this button here, and that will reveal the existing value the radio has set, which in this case is 59. And in order to make changes to this, you have to hold the PTT button and use the up-down channel selector on the radio only. You cannot do it on the microphone, and that will enable you to make adjustments where adjustments can be made. So what I'm going to do here is tell you that the value my radio has is 59, and then we're going to have a look and see if we can adjust this up. So the highest I can go is 5A, and then I release the PTT button, 5A. So that is the highest power setting that this radio will allow you to have in low power mode. And when I say low power mode, some of the radios will have, if they have a heatsink on the back, may have a low power mode when it's not modded and a high power mode when it is modded. And when you come to these menus, PL is the low power unmodded mode, and you may then see a P2 option, and the P2 option is the higher power mode. This radio does not have a high power mode, but it has enabled us to increase the power ever so slightly, and we'll check that on the power meter after. So to navigate through the menus, I can do so with the up and down, so I can move between the options, but I can only make the settings changes using the buttons on the radio. So the next option is F2, and F2 is the FM deviation mode, and my radio is FF is the mode or the setting my radio has in this option. This should be adjusted to about 1.9 kilohertz. If you don't have the equipment to be able to test that and set it, leave this setting alone. So that's the FM deviation mode. Moving on, we have AL, and this is the AM low power amplitude adjustment. My radio has a value of 31. This should be adjusted to about 90%. The next setting is R1. Now this is a bit of an odd one because R1 on most radios is an S-meter adjustment. And on other radios that I've checked this on, R1 has usually got a default value of 36. And this radio has a default value of 36. But I didn't see anywhere in the manual that this had a S-meter built in. But maybe this setting just doesn't do anything. So let's move on. The next setting is SE. Now, if you're in standard mode, then, or unmodded mode, this menu will be called S. It won't be called SE. And when you hold in the PTT button, it is telling you that the software version on this radio is version 1.1. My version is 1.1. So I'm assuming that this means software version in the expanded mode, and in the normal S mode, it just says S and it's the same value, 1.1. You can't change this. It's just for information. And then we're back to PL. So that is the service menu where you can adjust the radio, and please remember you can do damage in here, so please be very careful. Most people would just be interested in coming in, going to PL, and pushing it up, to the highest value that they can. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit the service mode by turning the radio off. When I turn the radio back on. The TS, by the way, means that the radio is in expanded mode. I'm going to just run up to channel 20, mid-band. Okay, FM channel 20 mid-band. Let's just do a power test and see whether that's made much of a difference. Okay, we're running 4.01 watts versus 3.8 odd that we had before. And let me switch to AM. 4.01 watts again. So you can get this radio absolutely nailed to 4 watts, and I understand why the factory would have just brought it back one notch underneath at 3.8 to ensure that they remain within the regulations. So that's it from the service menu and the settings that you can change. Remember to take a screenshot of the item of my sheet for this particular radio, and if you have the real service manual with all of the circuit board layouts, etc., then please get in contact, and I would love to receive that. And I have quite a lot for the President radios, but the newer radios, the service manuals are pretty sparse. It's a rather basic radio, but has most of the features you would need. However, the omission of a scan mode is tighter than a crab's arse. President, you get a level 1 Paddington Bear stare for that. It would also have been much more user-friendly if a few more buttons had been added, so you don't have such a complex and difficult to remember set of combinations. Apart from this, it's a nice little radio with decent receive audio. Perfect for any situation where you just want a reliable small radio that covers the basics. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. If you did, then please help the channel out by liking and subscribing. This really does help and ensures that I can continue to provide content. Please feel free to buy me a coffee, details in the description below, and if you have any questions or comments, then you know what to do. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Nasty know-it-alls need not apply. So until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and catch you in the next one.